Guys, welcome back to Lunatic Astrology. I'm your astrologer, Lori Lothy, and today I'm going to be interviewing one of my dear friends, Karen McMullen, who is a channel. Yes, she channels, and she channeled an amazing book called The Alchemy of Consciousness. And I love channeling because in my experience with my astrology and my clients, channeling is a Neptunian thing. And oh my God, the channelers who have strong Neptunes, it's incredible. I want to bring her on to talk about what she's up to, because I also channeled a book during a Neptune transit with Mars. And I think Mars and Neptune, my channel 2 books that I wrote, have a lot to do with how we can open up to the ultimate other dimensional platform or energy of Neptune. So she and I'll be discussing the ideas of what channeling is, how it works, and maybe a bit about the planet Neptune to bring it back to astrology. So here we go. I'm going to invite her into the Zoom room with me so we can chat with her. So I've just gotten Karen into our Zoom room today for our call, and I'm so excited because one of the things that I can say about Karen is that she's one of the most authentic people I've ever known, and she operates from a deep internal principle of integrity and honesty. So when she goes into channeling, and that's not what she was doing for years, she was like a business coach, and she was a life coach, and she was doing the really more normal stuff. She went totally woo, and if she goes totally woo, I know she's going somewhere so powerful and authentic and integral. And her book is, as I said, The Alchemy of Consciousness. It's a game-changing read. So welcome, Karen. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for being here with me, Lori. I always love connecting with you.
Yeah, well, me too. I do love connecting with you. I'm so glad that we're both friends and colleagues. So here's a few things I want to ask you, because I want this to be about people who are curious about channeling, and you're teaching a class in that, a very interesting course that I want people to be aware of. And we'll be putting a link in the bottom of my description box for the people to follow up and learn more about it. And anybody who's in my mailing list is going to get a special discount code. So check out my mail list from a weekly forecast below as well. But, you know, when I think of channeling, I think often of things like Seth Speaks, which was a book in the 1960s, I think, that I read years ago. And sometimes, of course, Esther Hicks with Abraham. And I got an impression early in my experience of channeling that people were kind of going completely out of their body or out of consciousness, almost like losing a sense of themselves. And it was a pretty woo, except for maybe Esther Hicks with Abraham. Before that, and I was around since the 60s and 70s, it was really a reserved for the very, very fringe element, and considered to be almost like trance channeling as a medium or something. Tell me about your experience of channeling and what it means, and why somebody would want to learn to do it or harness it in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think of channeling as being on a continuum. So, you know, trance channeling, like where the personality and the individual is like completely gone, and this voice comes in and speaks in a different intonation. That's like one end of the spectrum. And then on the other end of the spectrum is just being intuitive. Like I feel almost everyone can relate to connecting with some kind of divine guidance that seems from somewhere else than in here. So to me, channeling is just self communicating with spirit, self and spirit. And the self, we could say, is the individual separated one little perspective moving in the world. And then spirit is just a general term to describe non-physical reality. So, you know, depending on your beliefs, that might be just consciousness itself. You're connecting with the all that is, God, source, creator, ancestors, your higher power, your guides, your starseed origins. So, you know, depending on the framework that you come to channeling with, it's going to influence what potentiality can really unfold for you, I think. But to me, channeling can never really be forced. It's just something that you create an opening for through a desire to connect with your divine nature and to soften the egoic self just enough that there is that permeability and that connection that can happen.
I'm glad you said soften the egoic self, because as I mentioned in my intro before you got here, you know, I have several clients who are professional channelers, and they all have these Neptune features in their chart that are very strong. And when I channeled my own book, 2 books, it was a time when Neptune was transiting in my chart over my Mars, which really in the house of my voice. And in your chart, which I just looked at as we got on together, I was reminded that, you have Neptune sitting in the house of prophets and oracles and diviners, the third house of the goddess, in a sextile to your ascendant. I mean, your identity. And it's almost like you were born to do this kind of work for yourself and maybe to be a spearhead for it. Can you tell me what turned you on to it in a way you thought it was convincing? Because I'll tell you, sometimes you can like channel something, or I've channeled something for myself that I thought, well, that was interesting, but I'm certainly not going to bet the house on it. Like, you know what I mean? Where in your life did it become something that was so reliable or important? Do you have a story around that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is something I've talked about in some of my teachings. Just I trust the voice that comes to me because the voice proved itself trustworthy over years. So it wasn't like I am kind of a devotional person, and I did want to surrender to divine will, but at the same time, I'm also skeptical. And so I would get guidance that would come to me in my meditation. At first, it was just short little words like go to the beach or go do this, cut all your hair off. That was one of my rites of passage, was the voice said, cut your hair off. And I had hair similar to this, but it was more sun-kissed and beautiful. And I cut it all off. So I practiced surrender, but at the same time, I was kind of experimenting. I was like, okay, well, what if I listen to this voice and cut my hair off? Like, what will happen? And right after I cut my hair off, I received this incredible download of a coaching model that I used for years called Love, Sex, Genius. And I started writing a book around it, but then progressively, when I channeled Alchemy of Consciousness, I was just meditating in the morning, and all of a sudden the voice started dictating text. It was like undeniable, like, write this down. And after I wrote it, I was quite shocked at what had come through. And then this kept happening over and over and over. And eventually I had a book. And to me, I was like, I wonder if this is valuable to anyone other than me. And that's when I asked you to read it. You were the first person I asked to read, to see if it was anything more than just crazy ramblings.
Yeah, and there's some magic in even that, because the way that this all happened was you invited me to stay. All you astrologers, keep listening. This is an astrology channel. I'm going to tell you an astrology story. I was invited by Karen to stay at her place in Mexico, her beautiful little apartment in Troncones, Mexico. I'd never been to that part of Mexico before. It was, in a place I thought was kind of dangerous, a province called Guerra, which means war. And I was like, oh, but you know what? It was December and rainy in Vancouver. It was the winter of 2018. And she's like, it's free. I'm not going to be there. Do you want to rent it for like really cheap? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I jumped on the opportunity and I got there, and I didn't realize at the time I was on my Neptune line. Now, I mean, like, in the place in the world where I can go other than like the middle of Bangladesh. This is the only place, Troncones, Mexico, where I have a Neptune line at 00 right through my midheaven. Neptune, the god of channeling, the god of higher imagination, the god of enlightenment. And I get there and I spend like a week and a half at her place, and she's got a little book on her nightstand called The Impersonal Life. And I start reading it, and another book about enlightenment by Jed McKenna called Enlightenment. And I'm starting reading these books, and I'm on the beach, and I have this massive spiritual awakening that happens because I'm in my Neptune line, and I'm in Karen's place where she's, this other channel book, The Impersonal Life. And what was kind of cool about the whole Neptune cascade channeling story and the vicissitudes of fate is that when I read her book, The Alchemy of Consciousness, in Montreal, while Neptune was transiting my natal Mars in the house of voice and speech, I suddenly started hearing a voice talking to me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm copying Karen, I'm following in her footsteps. And I had my own book come through. Like, it was just so weird. My own book came through shortly after hers, called The Coming Age of Miracles, which is a free PDF. Link below if you want to grab it. But I'm kind of like seeing this enchantment that comes with this whole process of the Neptune factor. You're born to be a Neptune channeler. I'm not necessarily, but I was on a Neptune activation line in Mexico. And then I was in a Neptune transit during 2019-20 over my Mars that led to 2 different channeled books, The Way of Miracles and The Coming Age of Miracles, which I need to publish. Now, I remember in your book, I think it was your book, Alchemy of Consciousness, or somewhere else. Didn't you tell a story about going to the beach, being told to get up at dawn? Can you tell that?
Yeah, so that was before I like started channeling this much, but it was part of the process of building up trust in the voice. But I woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 4 a.m. I was in Mexico, and the voice said, "Go to the beach." And I got in my mind the image of exactly where on the beach to go. And I was just like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, it's 4 a.m. It's actually kind of cool out. I have to ride my bike across like this dog field, and then, pack a beach bag. And I'd rather just be in bed right now. But I was really devoted to listening to my inner voice. So I did all the stuff. I went to the beach, and it was really dark out. And as I arrived at the beach, there were waves upon waves sets of bioluminescence in the water. So if you don't know what bioluminescence are, it's like these tiny little creatures that when the water agitates, the water turns like fluorescent blue. It was the most incredible light show I have ever seen. It was the most magical moment. And I had brought my speaker, so I just danced on the beach alone with the bioluminescence and had this kind of ecstatic experience for several hours until the sun rose. So that's the kind of thing where I just built trust over time. And like, sometimes people ask me, how do you know if you can trust the voice that comes through? And to me, it's like, if you listen to it and it brings good to your life, and you can feel that the voice is good, and there's like a harmony, a beauty, a love, a soothing, comforting, a sense of truth, you can learn to trust that over time. And I love your story about channeling, because really the message of Alchemy of Consciousness is all of us can still our minds, quiet ourselves, connect to presence, and connect to our own inner truth at any moment. Like, we have this ability, and when we do that, we become like one cell in the body of life. So yeah,
that's what I love about your book. And the same message was at the end of My Coming Age of Miracles. The invitation is not, so in other words, unlike the old stuff with Seth Speaks or Esther Hicks, we're going to someone else to be the source. And what you're teaching and what I was getting is it's time for each of us to do that ourselves. We're in the time where this is possible.
absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to send you a little quote from The Impersonal Life that's at the beginning of my book, because The Impersonal Life really inspired a lot of my book. But it's basically saying that in such a poetic way. Maybe you can put it in the comments below the video.
Absolutely. I would love to have that quote. I feel like I'm not like the 3D ascension 5D person. I'm just not that person. I'm not really that person. I tried to be that person for a while. I don't know if we're really ascending to 5D, whatever it means. But I would say that I do feel that what I see with people in my own life who have always thought we're nuts and bolts, so that we're like, very salt of the earth and didn't have a bit of woo in them, all of a sudden they're all wooed out. And they're actually getting like dynamic messages from the divine, synchronistic, crazy impulses are happening. Things are flowing that way. And for some reason, it feels like there is at the same time a great deal of darkness on the planet and a great deal of what seems like polarity. There's also a momentum and an increase in what we would say is synchronicity, prophecy, seership, intuitive abilities, and like what we're doing, both of us, tuning into that voice. I mean, for me, it's my morning coffee at 6 a.m. if I can get my act together, but certainly no later than 8. Quite often it's 6:30 in the stillness in the morning, and just hearing what those early, stillness moments are for. And, it could be like a whole narrative where I have to get a journal and write. And sometimes it's just a sweet couple of words or a short and sweet message. But it's now a part of how I connect with my everyday. I don't start a day without that moment, of stillness. And I don't mean meditation for 3 hours, we're not talking that. We're just talking like the stillness, the quietude within, inviting in something.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's essential because I mean, one of the things that I teach when I'm talking about channeling is one of the reasons why I was able to channel is I actually made it space for the messages to come through, and I sat quietly and meditated. I do notice now that I live back in Canada, it's a lot more difficult. Like living in Canada, to me, I feel there's so much more emphasis on the material realm and like the bustle of everyday life. So it is a little more intentional to take that quiet and to really drop in. Like it was easier in Mexico when I was living outside of the matrix.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Totally. I think that there's a lot of energetic noise here. And that's why for me, the dawn hours work because they are more quiet. So tell me a bit about the course you're teaching and what people might expect if they want to jump in. And don't forget, if you're listening to my YouTube channel, all you have to do is sign up for my newsletter. It's a free weekly forecast. And Karen's got a special 30% discount rate for you. So if this appeals to you, signing up for my forecast newsletter, you can always quit the newsletter if you don't like the weekly forecast. But it's a great little group of people on my newsletter, and we get to connect weekly about what's coming up in the week ahead. So go ahead, tell us about your course.
Well, the course is called Clear Channel, and it's about creating that reliable connection between self and spirit. And part of having a clear channel is healing, so that you're not projecting a film or a false perception over what kind of information can come to you. So there is some focus on that. And I'm always an experiential teacher, so there's some content, but it's a lot of working with you and where you're at. And this is actually my first time delivering this program. So I'm very excited because what I find is usually the content emerges as I'm working with the people. One thing, so I have identified the cycle of transmission. So that's one of the things that we're going to go through. And one of the things that's so powerful about that, and one of the things that I've channeled and come to understand about myself, which I find is very relevant to the type of people that are drawn to this program, is that we learn to understand that we are energetic transmitters. And so even if you're channeling a message for someone, it's not just the message, it's an energetic transmission that carries with it an activation. And I can't stress enough how incredible this is, because, for example, when I came back to Canada, it was a real shock for me financially to adjust to this way of living in the society and the high cost of living. After living on the beach in Mexico for 5 years and just saying like, okay, screw business. And I could not for the life of me make the shift inside of me to getting back on board with business and money making. I was still charging $150 an hour for my readings, and I was barely making ends meet. And in one transmission from a woman I saw online, my beliefs about money changed. I felt like I had an electric shock. Like I went to bed and I was trying to sleep, but I felt the electricity moving up and down my body so strongly. And I have not looked at money the same since that moment.
Now, if I was to grab your chart, I'll tell you why that happened. That sounds like a Uranus activation. That sounds like you got zapped with a Uranian bolt of, transmission from that through the vehicle of that planet. That's really cool, through that woman. No, I agree with you. I think that there is always, even in just doing basic readings with people, there's what I tell you and then there's what I transmit to you. But here's what I'm wondering for this course. Is this for someone who wants to channel for their own needs, or someone who wants to do a professional job and become a channeler?
It can be for either. I am going to talk about channeling with clients and charging and that kind of thing. I'm an entrepreneur. Most of the people I work with are entrepreneurial. So that part is always coming in. And it's kind of what I was wanting to get at with the transmission piece, is that when you understand that you are an energy worker and that you are actually transmitting energy, and that transmission is an activation that causes a transformation and an integration that leads to a new creation for that person, for me, it dramatically changed the understanding of the value that I offer. So
wonderful. So in someone's interested to sign up for your course, is it, I think you told me how many weeks it was, but I forgot. Is it?
Oh yeah, sorry. Practical things. Yeah,
it's only 4 weeks.
7 modules over 2.5 weeks, plus a Q&A, and we have a private Facebook group. And it also includes a 1-hour reading with me, which is called Activate Your Power to Serve. And in that reading, I channel for you from the Council of Light. And that is really, the Council of Light are my guides. They want to talk about who you are, why you're here, and how to bring it into form. And they're very practical about that.
Well, that's a really good deal, because you're getting that session with you plus the actual course that teaches you how to be the thing that you are.
Exactly. And then I also incorporate human design. So I look at your chart. It's kind of similar in a way to astrology, and yeah, because it's really about doing it your way. And like, one of the things I'm all about is, like, when I was told by the Council of Light that I'm an energy transmitter, and that I should really work with energy on the energetic level, I didn't want to learn energy healing through any modality. I wanted to learn how I do it and how it activates through me uniquely without influence. So that's kind of one of the things we're going to explore, is how do you channel, how do you transmit?
Okay, that's really important. And in this 2 weeks with 7 modules, where you're doing this, these modules live, or these are pre-recorded for your students?
Oh, it's live and interactive. So I do it either through Zoom or Facebook Live. I'm just going to kind of play between the 2 formats. But yeah, it's a small group, so it's going to be like an intimate container, and really high touch for sure.
Oh, nice. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm almost tempted myself, except I'm already in 2 other courses. So I'm maybe in a 3rd one shortly. I'm studying some astrology classes right now. Okay. Well, I'm intrigued. I'm excited, because you're actually going to be doing something in the world that I think is needed. I think more people, whether it's for yourself or you want to do it professionally or entrepreneurially, more people like attuned to the possibility that we are all channels. It's just how hard are you going to open up and go for it? And unlike you, Neptune right on your sextile, your ascendant, I still have a pretty decent Neptune as well, in terms of where my Neptune is placed. And I think that, a lot of people who'll be drawn to you. I mean, I don't think it's chicken and egg when it comes to astrology. I always wonder how this works. I feel often that people who are going to be drawn to you, in hindsight, if someone glances at their natal chart, anyone could go, holy Neptune. Like, they could feel that there's this part of their being that's got this strong Neptunian either transit ongoing when they're drawn to work with you, or possibly just a very powerful natal Neptune. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if it's for you, you know it. I almost put very little on the sales page, because when I tried to do something like old school where you do all the epic descriptions, I was just like, no, this is just an energetic thing. People are going to get it or they're not. And it seems to be resonating that way. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I love that. I know Neptune himself would be like, forget the script. We're just going to put out the energy and we're going to bring it in. Who's coming is coming and who's going is going. And yeah, Neptune isn't like, you'll know this is for you. We have A, B, C, and D. You know, well, Karen, I'm excited, and thank you for offering my people who are on my newsletter that discount code. But if you just want to grab the link to her in the description box, the link to her class, and pay the regular price, go ahead. But I'm trying to lure you to my amazing cosmic moonshine. Take a swig weekly forecast. I try to keep it humorous. I keep it trying to make it fun to read about what the planets are doing in the sky each week, so you can get that 30% code from Karen.
Wow. Well, this was so awesome, Lori. You're the best. And I just think you're so generous.
You know, it's a mutual love fest between us. So ever since we first got together in person in Mexico, I knew we'd always be together in some way. So, so everyone, thank you for listening. And please, in the comments, feel free to comment and share your thoughts about channeling, your thoughts about this kind of thing that, you know, people do in the world, and your experiences with it even. Let us know how you feel about channeling in this modern day. And thank you, Karen, so much. I'm going to end the whole call, so we're just going to drop off together. We're going to back chat after, because this dog is looking at me. I'm dog sitting. Like, why haven't I not taken him for a walk? And I've been working for 4 hours straight. So,
okay, well, thank you so much. Mwah.
Love you. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Love.